Hello everybody. तो अभी मैं आपके साथ वापस हूँ. तो today we are going to do part B of Social Science Williams book. So here I show and so the part B, is starting from chapter number 13. So let's start to it. So chapter number 13 is Prominent Dynasties of India, chapter number 13. So in this it's mainly of our history and all. So let's see through the contact mapping what we have. So today we will cover the part B of this medium social science, and if you want to see the part A, you can click the link which is given in the description. So let's start. So in content mapping we have is all about our history, prominent dynasties and all. So in this introduction, first we have introduction of India history consists of several dynasties. Then we have separate dynasties. Then we have separate dynasties in which we are going to have some of the information, the main information. So first, let's read the introduction. Okay.
Indian history is very rich and diverse, with many dynasties.
Okay, I'm sorry for that. Anyways, let's go through this chapter and let's read about the prominent dynasties of India before the British rule. So let's start. Now, Indian history is a very rich and diverse, with many dynasties being an integral part of it. Each dynasty, under governance of several kings, has contributed to its prosperity. Let's learn about some prominent dynasties that have ruled India before the advent of British. So, इसमें मैंने आपको क्या बता रखा है कि इंडिया की हिस्ट्री में बहुत सारे रिच और डाइवर्स डायनेस्टीज हैं जो हमारी इंटरनल पार्ट है. अब एक एक डायनेस्टी में अलग अलग किंग रूल किया करते थे और वो and made has and contributed its prosperity. तो अब इसमें हम कुछ प्रोमिनेंट डायनेस्टीज के बारे में लर्न करेंगे जिन्होंने ब्रिटिश से पहले इंडिया पे रूल किया. तो पहले हम डिड यू नो पढ़ते हैं. Mauryan Empire was the largest empire of the world at that time. अब ब्रिटिश से पहले जो मौर्यन एम्पायर था जो वो सबसे बड़ा एम्पायर माना जाता है. Now Chanakya was one of the greatest administrators India has ever witnessed. Till today, his works are relevant in fields of economics and फिलोसफी. अब चाणक्य जो था वो बहुत बड़ा एक एडमिनिस्ट्रेटर था इंडिया का और उसका विटनेस बहुत ही अच्छा था और आज तक उसका वर्क है वो रिलेवेंट होता है, वो यूज हुआ जाता है इकोनॉमिक्स और फिलोसफी की फील्ड में. अब हम आते हैं मॉडर्न डायनेस्टी. तो अब पहले देखते हैं कि मॉडर्न डायनेस्टी कब से कब तक चला था. मॉडर्न डायनेस्टी 322 टू 165 BCE से तक का चला था. तो 322 टू 185 BCE तक. अब इंडिया was united as the largest state under the Mauryan dynasty for the very first time. It stretched in the north up to the Himalayas and the east up to the state of Assam. Toward the west, it reached beyond Pakistan to Afghanistan, to what it is now Afghanistan. The modern dynasty was established by Chandragupta Maurya. Chanakya played a prominent role in its establishment. तो इसमें मॉडर्न डायनेस्टी में व्हाट इज देम, मतलब इन ये जो मॉडर्न डायनेस्टी है ये सबसे बड़ी डायनेस्टी है जिसने इंडिया पे रूल किया था बिफोर ब्रिटिश। तो उसमें ये इसका सबसे बड़ा रूल था और इट स्ट्रेच्ड वेरी बिग। अब Chandragupta and the modern dynasty was established by Chandragupta Maurya। तो ये किसने establish की थी? चंद्रगुप्त मौर्य। जो और फिर चाणक्य ने बहुत ही बड़ा रोल प्ले किया, very private role he played in its establishment. Okay, so now we have Ashoka. Now Ashoka was the most famous king of modern dynasty और अभी भी उसे मतलब उसे अभी भी बहुत ज़्यादा रिस्पेक्ट दी जाती है। इंडिया was united as the largest state under his rule during his military adventures. He witnessed immense mystery and loss of life. This became the turning point of his life, and he was saddened and decided to take resource in peace. Hence, he embraced Buddhism. Um, the empire began to decline after the death of Ashoka. Now, अब अशोका जो है वो बहुत ही ज्यादा फेमस किंग था मॉडर्न डायनेस्टी का, और इंडिया सबसे लार्जेस्ट स्टेट थी जब वो मॉडर्न डायनेस्टी में रूल करता था। एंड जब रूल करता था तो बहुत सारी लड़ाइयाँ होती थी, और फिर एक बार उसने रियलाइज किया कि ये लड़ाइयाँ बहुत ज्यादा पीस को ये पीस को मतलब बहुत सारी लाइफ लॉस हो रही है, बहुत सारे बच्चे के पापा मामा एनीथिंग नेबर्स एनी एवरीबॉडी इज लूजिंग हिज और हर लाइफ। सो जैसे इसने ये नोटिस किया, ही दिस बिकेम द टर्निंग पॉइंट ऑफ हिज लाइफ। देन he decided to take peace in a jungle. He went for jungle. He went to forest, and then he he also discovered Buddhism. And then after then this modern empire became to it just finished after the death of Ashoka. Then some of the books, Arthashastra, Edicts of Ashoka, were the highlights of written literature of that time. Also, wood steel, a high quality steel, was developed in South India under the Mauryan rule. तो अर्थशास्त्र, एडिक्स ऑफ अशोका, ये एक मतलब बुक्स थी जो मौर्यन डायनेस्टी में लिखी गई थी। अब एक और चीज, वुड स्टील एक हाई क्वालिटी स्टील था, बहुत ही अच्छी क्वालिटी का था, जो साउथ इंडिया यानी बांग्लादेश तमिलनाडु के एरिया में मौर्यन रूल के अंडर बना था। अब ये हो गया हमारा मॉडर्न डायनेस्टी का। अब हम आते हैं गुप्ता डायनेस्टी। अब गुप्ता डायनेस्टी कब से कब तक चली थी? इट वेंट फ्रॉम 320 टू 550 सीई। तो ये 320 से लेकर 550 सीई तक चली थी। अब मच ऑफ द इंडिया सब्सक्रिप्शन was united under the Gupta dynasty. This period has been called the Golden Age of India. The peace and prosperity created under the leadership of Guptas enabled the pursuit of scientific and artist endeavors. The philosophy of Hindu culture took shape during this time. Chandragupta I, Samudragupta, and Chandragupta too are some of the famous Gupta leaders. अब इसमें हमें बताया गया है कि मतलब इसमें सबसे पहले इसमें सबसे पहले जो बता रखा है कि ये बता रखा है कि गुप्ता डायनेस्टी जब गुप्ता डायनेस्टी थी तब उस टाइम को मतलब 320 से 550 सीई तक गुप्ता डायनेस्टी वाज नोन एज गोल्डन एज ऑफ इंडिया. The peace and prosperity created under the leadership of the Guptas enabled the process as scientific and artistic in. अब इस गुप्ता डायनेस्टी ने मतलब ये बहुत ज्यादा आर्टिस्टिक थी. मतलब इसको आर्ट में ज्यादा माना जाता था आई थिंक. एंड ये हिंदू कल्चर पे फिलॉसफी थी और इसमें चंद्रगुप्ता 1, समुद्रगुप्ता और चंद्रगुप्ता 2 कुछ लीडर्स थे जिनको बहुत जो बहुत ही अच्छे गुप्ता रूलर्स बने थे गुप्ता डायनेस्टी में. अब आता है चोला डायनेस्टी. अब गुप्ता डायनेस्टी के बाद हम इसमें चोला डायनेस्टी का. अब चोला डायनेस्टी कब तक थी? 300 BCE to 127 CE. तो 300 BCE to 127 CE. Now Cholas established the greatest empire in South India under the Raja Chola I and his subsequent successors. They succeed in becoming military culture and economically a major power of recon with the South Asia. They had a strong naval presence in the region. Prominence gained in art, religion, and literature was such that had never been seen in South India. Monument, temples and sculptures in stone and bronze were the finest seen till date. अब चोलाज ने जो थी वो सबसे बड़ी ग्रेटेस्ट एम्पायर थी साउथ इंडिया में राजा चोला तक. अब और उनके साथ जो सक्सेसर्स थे जो उनके साथ थे और उन्होंने ये सक्सीड भी किया कि दे सक्सीडेड becoming military, culturally and economically a major power of recon with South Asia. South Asia में there were the India to come. In South Asia, India is also there. And they had a strong naval presence. बहुत ही strong naval थी. Naval is the one that's also an army which fights in water. So prominent art, religion, literature was such that have never been seen in South India. And monumental temples, sculptures in stone and the bronze were the finest seen till date. Now in the dynasty, now Qutbuddin Aibak, a former slave of the Muhammad Gohari, was the first Sultan of Delhi. Architecture, music, literature saw the change in this period due to intermixing of two cultures. Delhi Sultanate is only Indo-Islamic empire that have a female ruler in India named Raja Sultan. अब देखो कुतुबुद्दीन ऐबक, a slave means a criminal जो जेल में रहे. तो वो मोहम्मद गोरी की जेल में था and he was the first Sultan of Delhi Sultanate. और आर्किटेक्चर, म्यूजिक, लिटरेचर उसने ये चेंज देगा इस पीरियड में क्योंकि intermixing of two cultures, the Delhi Sultanate and the Indo-Islamic Empire, ये दोनों मिक्स हो गए थे और फिर इन दोनों को एक फीमेल ने रूल किया, जो सबसे पहली फीमेल थी डायनेस्टी को रूल करने की, वो थी रजिया सुल्तान। अब दिल्ली सल्तनत के बाद हमारा आ जाता है मुगल डायनेस्टी। अब मुगल डायनेस्टी वाज फ्रॉम 1526 to 1857। ओके, तो ये कब से कब तक थी? 1526 से लेकर 1857 तक। द मुगल डायनेस्टी was established by Babur in 1526. The greatest Mughal emperor was Akbar, who brought nearly all Indian subsequent north of Godavari river under his rule. He was just a ruler who insulted political instituted political and social reformers. The economy also grew and became strong due to the politicals intentioned by him. He treated people. He treated people of all religions equally. His subjects loved him and had complete faith in him. He was succeeded by his son Jahangir, and Shah Jahan was the grandson of Akbar, and his region was considered to be the golden age of Mughal architecture. The Taj Mahal, one of the wonders of the world, and Jama Masjid, one of the largest mosques in India, besides the Red Fort and many such monuments were built during this rule. Aurangzeb, which was known as Aurangzeb Khan, Shah Jahan's son, increased the size of kingdom to its biggest ever. However, during his reign itself, Mughals became weak and gradually their power started to decline. So, in this मुगल डायनेस्टी बाबर ने इन्वेंट की थी, और सबसे बड़ा एम्परर था अकबर, जिसने सब रिलीजन्स को अच्छी तरह एक इक्वली उसने ट्रीट किया। और उसका सन था जहांगीर, और एंड हिज ग्रैंडसन वाज शाहजहां। और उस रीजन में में ताजमहल, रामा मस्जिद और रेड फोर्ट, ये सारी मॉन्यूमेंट्स शाहजहां के रूल में बनी थी। और औरब खान, जो शाहजहां का बेटा, जो शाहजहां का सन था, उसने किंगडम का साइज बढ़ा दिया, बिगेस्ट एवर, मतलब बहुत बड़ा कर दिया। और किसी भी तरह औरब खान के रूल में ये मुगल्स became weak and started decline the power. So अब हम आते हैं अराइव इंडिया अंडर द ब्रिटिश रूल, चैप्टर 14। तो इसमें कंटेंट मैपिंग में है अराइवल ऑफ ब्रिटिश इन इंडिया, अराइवल ऑफ यूरोपियन। तो इसमें दो पार्ट आ गए हैं, अराइवल्स ऑफ यूरोपियंस इन इंडिया एंड हाउ डिड ब्रिटिश कम टू रूल ओवर इंडिया। नाउ डिस्कंट अगेंस्ट ब्रिटिश रूल, revolt of 1857, working for reformers, race of nationalism, and all. So, arrival of British in India. India enjoyed flourishing trade with Europe since ancient times. India's Spices, jewelry, silk, and cotton were taken by land on ports of Red Sea. From these ports, the goods were loaded in ships bound of Europe for a long time. Most of the trade was controlled by the Arabs. Things began to change after the Portuguese explorer called Vasco da Gama discovered a direct sea route to India. After the discovery of this new sea route, Europeans began sailing uh, to India for trade. The Portuguese were the first Europeans to arrive in India. They made a huge profits by selling Indian goods in European market. This attracted the Dutch, the British, and the French to India. Mm, There was a stiff competition among them. Each wanted a bigger share of trade with India. This led to bitter wars. Finally, the British emerged as the most powerful among the European trades. They trade with India through the British East Indian Company. How did British came to rule India? Intentionally, the British came to India for only for trade, but soon they realized they need to establish the rule over India territories. They took advantage of lack of unity among Indian rulers and began gaining power. They first established the control over Bengal by winning the Battle of Plassey in 1757 against Siraj ud Daul, the Nawab of Bengal. And in 1764, Battle of Barracks was fought between the British and one side of Nawab of Bengal, um, the Nawab of Awadh and Mughal Emperor on the other. By winning this war, the British got complete hold of Bengal. Over the next century, they managed to extend their rule, large parts of country and all. Now discount against the British rule. Now having the family established themselves in India, the British started exploiting the people. In fact, they used unfair means of exploit the farmers, trades, and the rules of land state. Farmers were unhappy with British because of the high taxes they were made to pay. Mm, Many farmers lost their land and they were not able to pay the taxes during the floods and drought. Their resent increased after the British began forcing them to grow crops such as indigo and cotton, and these were bought at the low rates from the farmers and sold at high rates in England and other countries. The farmers became poor and died due to starvation. Starvation means bhukha varna. Means they were not able to eat anything because lack of money. And all. So things began when the British arrived in India. There was a huge demand of craft and textiles all over the world. The British made huge profits by selling these goods in England and other countries. This began to change due to the installation in Britain. British industries needed cheap raw materials and a huge market for the products. It started taking raw materials from the India and also turned India into a market of its products. Mm, Now, clothes made in British industries were much cheaper than Indian handmade textiles. So the demand for British mile makes clothes shorter as machines made cloth were cheaper. The handloom industry of India suffered as the people stopped buying their products. Many Indian weavers and craftsmen lost their jobs. The British did not allow Indians to open mills and factories. Indian trades were not allowed to trade on the terms. Policies like subsidiary alliance and doctrine of lapse were made by the British to gradually take control of the land in India. Subsidiary alliance forced the rulers to maintain only British troops to return for their protection. Doctrine of lapse meant that a kingdom would be taken over by the British in case the ruler died without leaving a male heir. Indian rulers and princes felt that these were very unjust policies and the British sought to expand their hold over India through unfair means. Revolt of uh, Revolt of 1857. Now there was one more fight between this, and that came to known as the revolt of anyway. So revolt of uh, now ever since the British established a hold in India, people in different parts of country had been protesting against the unjust policies of British. It was only in 1857 that massive revolt broke out, which quickly spread among the large sections of Indian society. This revolt was known as the Mutiny or the First War of Indian Independence. The revolt began after Indian soldiers serving in the British Army, also known as supplies, refused use a new rifle called Enfield. The rifle has grease cardials. While holding the rifle, the soldiers had to bite one end of the cartridge with their mouth. There were rumors that that this grease was made from fat of cows and pigs. This was against the religious sentiments of both Hindu as well as Muslim soldiers. Hence, Indian soldiers refused to use these rifles and revolt. Uh, Name of the soldier who intended the revolt, Mangal Pandey. The revolt, sparked off by the supplies, soon spread across northern India and became a mass rebellion. Now the revolt started Miraj. It was joined by the farmers, craftsmen, and other section of society. The soldiers declared Bahadur Shah Zafar, the last Mughal emperor, as their leader. The revolt was led by Nana Sahib at Kanpur, Begum Hazrat Begum Hazrat Mahal in Awadh, Rani Lakshmibai in Jhansi, and Kuhuvan Singh in Bihar. So I think you all know that Rani Lakshmibai was also known as Jhansi ki Rani. The British were taken by the surprise. They never expected that revolt would turn into the mass rebellion. By it, they respond with the force in September 1857. Barre, a few months after the revolt started, British captured Delhi from the rebels and were finally successful in suppressing the revolt. The revolt of 1857 failed in evicting the British from India. There were many reasons for the failure. Firstly, it had no spread to all parts of India, and there were many Indian rulers who did not support it. Secondly, the rebels did not have um, sufficient funds and good weapons. The English soldiers were organized and had money as well as modern weapons. After the suppression of revolt, the rule of the East Indian Company came to the end. The British government took over the administration of India. It also allowed Indian kings to rule over their territories if they agreed to accept its authority. Working from reforms, many social and religious practices which caused suffering among the people were being practiced in India, such as sati, female infant, child marriage, and caste system. The education system introduced by British played a major role, raised awareness against the practice. Many educated people start questioning such um, such practices and worked towards the invention. Raja Ram Mohan Roy, Ishwar Chandra Vidyasagar, Jyotirao Phule, Swami Vivekanand, and Swami Dayanand Saraswati are the names of these reformers who contributed towards the cause. This the cause will also be remembered. They, along with the reformers, worked towards improving the status of women. They also encourage widow remarriages and education of girls. They strongly protest against sati, female and child marriage and caste system. Rays of nationalism. What is nationalism? It is a feeling that people have being loyal and proud of their country. How was the feeling of nationalism born in India? Educated Indians realized the harm that was being done to India by British. The British were exporting India and its resources by keeping the country poor and backward. This realized united the Indians against the British. Slowly, the feeling unity and nationalism grew and strong and lead the birth of Indian National Congress (INC) in 1885. An Englishman called Alan Octavian Hume, founder of INC, the first session of Congress was held at Bombay. It was attended by 72 delegates from India, all over India. Um, um, and uh, the president of session was W.C. Bononji. Early leader of Congress included Dadabhai Naroji, Sundarnath Banerjee, uh, Behroz Saha Mehta, uh, uh, Gopal Krishnan Gokhale, and Baruddin Tayabji. During its early years, the ILC took many steps to awake the spirit of unity amongst the Indians. Its leaders wrote articles and gave speeches critiquing British policies and actions. Many of its leaders, such as Sultanate Banerjee and Gopal Krishna Gokhale, submitted requests for informal of the British. They were called moderates. There was another group within Congress which wanted leaders to adopt strong methods such as boycotts and strikes and made the British accept their demands. Leaders such as Lal Lajpat Rai, Bal Gandhar uh, Tilak, and Bipin Chandra Pal belonged to this group. They were called radicals. These leaders wanted Swaraj, self rule for Indians. Bal Tilak once Bal Gangadhar Tilak once declared Swaraj is my birthright and I shall have it. The Congress slowly became very strong. The growing popularity of the Congress worried the British government. In order to suspense the rising spirit of nationalism, the British government made many strict laws. The British used policy to divide the rule into dynasties became dynasties between Hindus and Muslims. Lala Lajpat Rai, Bal Gandhar Tilak, and Bipin Chandra Pal were popularly known as Lal Bal Pal. Uh, Now India wants freedoms. In this, we have towards independence, partition of Bengal, and then India won freedom. So towards independence. Now, in the previous lesson, you read till the formation of Indian National Congress. This lesson continues to and informs us about the major events until the freedom was attained by India, partial of Bengal. In 1905, the British decided to divide a portion Bengal. One half was to have a large majority of Muslims, while the other half was to have a majority of Hindus. Mm, this move angered the people as they felt that the British were preventing Hindus and Muslims from uniting against them. To protest against the partial of Bengal, the Congress launched Swadeshi and Boycott movements. Uh, Swadeshi and Biotic movements. Swadeshi movements encourage people to use goods made in India. At the same time, people were encouraged to boycott British goods. The Swadeshi and Biotic movements got a massive response from the public. Huge bonfires were lit in which foreign goods were burnt. Many women and the students come forward to participate in these movements. The British tried their best and suppressed these movements and were armed by the uproar over the partition of Bengal. They eventually decided to reunite Bengal in 1911. Rise of revolutionaries. Swadeshi means of one's own country. Now, during the same time, Bengal witnessed the rise of voluntaries. You have read about the methods used by the moderates and the radicals to make the British accept their demands for the welfare of Indians. However, voluntaries believed that British could be driven out of India only through force. Audibantium Ghosh, V. Sarkar, and Ajit Singh were the early revolutionaries. Some of them were later arrested and hanged.
Rule of Mahatma Gandhi. Mahatma Gandhi had studied law in England. Thereafter, he had moved to South Africa to practice it. While in South Africa, he was appalled at the racial discrimination. He protested against it through satyagraha and non-violence. Under his leadership began the last phase of our freedom struggle.
After he returned to India in 1915, he traveled throughout the country to understand the problems faced by the people. He was shocked at the condition of the poor. He fought against both the British as well as certain social and religious evil practices of the people. He asked the people to protest against unjust laws made by the British government. Jallianwala Bagh Massacre. On April 13, 1919, many people had gathered in Jallianwala Bagh, a park with a high walled boundary in Amritsar, for a public meeting. A British officer, General Dyer, and his men blocked the only entrance to the park and opened fire at the crowd gathered there. Hundreds of men, women, and children were killed, while thousands were injured. This incident came to be known as the Jallianwala Bagh Massacre. The whole country was shocked at this incident. All Indian leaders protested against this horrible act. Non-cooperation movement. In 1920, Gandhiji launched the non-cooperation movement. Gandhiji asked the people to disobey the British and their laws peacefully. Many students stopped attending schools and colleges. People began refusing to work for the British. Many Indians resigned from government posts. Indian lawyers began boycotting courts. It was a peaceful protest that Gandhiji had desired. However, he had called off the movement in 1922 after some people had set fire to a police station in Chauri Chaura in Uttar Pradesh, killing 22 policemen. Shocked by the incident, Gandhiji withdrew the movement. Soon after this, Gandhiji was arrested and sent to jail. During this movement, many leaders had joined Gandhiji. Among them were Jawaharlal Nehru, Rajendra Prasad, Motilal Nehru, Maulana Azad, Chitranjan Das, and C. Rajgopalachari. Simon Commission. Since law and order situation at that time was getting out of control, the British government decided to make some changes. It appointed the Simon Commission in 1927. As there was no Indian in the commission, the Congress decided to boycott it. When the commission arrived in India in 1928, it was greeted with slogans Simon Go Back. A new group of revolutionaries such as Bhagat Singh, Rajguru, Sukhdev, Chandrasekhar Azad, and B.K. Dutt became active during this time. Civil Disobedience Movement. In December 1929, the Congress demanded Purna Swaraj or complete independence from the British government. In 1930, The civil disobedience movement began under the leadership of Gandhiji. His march to Dandi, a village in coastal Gujarat, came to be known as the Dandi March. Gandhiji made salt there and broke the salt law, by which Indians were prohibited to make or sell salt. It was a huge success. Soon, many such marches were organized all over the country. The British responded by arresting leaders and hundreds of people. But eventually, they were forced to introduce some reforms in the government. In 1937, elections were held in the provinces in India. The Congress won in most of the provinces and was allowed to take part in the government. However, the real power still remained with the British. Quit India movement. In 1942, Gandhiji launched the Quit India movement, demanding complete freedom for India. He asked the people to do or die or karo ya maro. In their attempt to throw the British out of the country, many leaders were jailed. Role of Subhash Chandra Bose. During the same time, Subhash Chandra Bose, also called Netaji, raised the Indian National Army or the Azad Hind Fauj in Southeast Asia. Its battle cry was Jai Hind. India wins freedom. The Second World War ended in 1945. After the war, the British government agreed to leave India. However, Muslim leaders demanded a separate Muslim state of Pakistan. The British agreed to their demands and decided to divide the country into two, India and Pakistan. Finally, India got its freedom on 15th August 1947. Jawaharlal Nehru became the first Prime Minister of Free India and Dr. Rajendra Prasad the first President. On this historic occasion, Jawaharlal Nehru said, "At the stroke of the midnight hour, when the world sleeps, India will awake to life and freedom."
So, Milk, did you know? Netaji's famous slogan was "Give me blood and I will give you freedom." The meaning is तुम मुझे खून दो मैं तुम्हें आज़ादी दूंगा. So now let's go to the next one. Great people.
Great people. There have been many great people who are remembered even now for their contribution to society, religion, science, arts, literature, and music. Let us read about the lives of some such people. Sushruta. Sushruta was a noted surgeon who lived about 2000 years ago. Sushruta performed many kinds of surgeries, removing stones from bladder and kidneys, treating fractures, and performing eye operations to remove cataract. Known as the father of plastic surgery, he was especially skilled in reconstructing noses. Sushruta had a vast knowledge of medicinal plants. He is also known as the author of the Sushruta Samhita, a well known work on medicine. Charaka. Charaka, a physician, lived in India about 2000 years ago. He wrote a book on medicine called Charaka Samhita. In his book, he described the diagnosis and treatment of many diseases. He described the various stages through which food passes before being fully digested. He also listed what duties and responsibilities doctors had towards patients. He also had a vast knowledge about the medicinal values of many plants. Kalidasa. Kalidasa was a noted poet and dramatist in ancient India. He lived in the court of a Gupta ruler called Chandragupta II. Two of his well known poems are Raghu Vamsha and Kumara Sambhava. His works include Meghduta, Ritu Samhara, and Abhigyan Shakuntalam. Tansen. Tansen was a famous singer and musician in the Mughal ruler Akbar's court. He was one of the Navratnas or the nine gems. He learnt music from a saint called Swami Haridas, a saint singer of Vrindavan. Tansen combined the Indian and Persian styles of music in his work. He composed many famous ragas or tunes such as Rag Malhar and Rag Deepak. These were sung at different times of the day.
Did you know it is said Tansen could cause rain when he sung Raga Malhar? He could light lamps by singing Raga Deepak.
Sir Syed Ahmad Khan. Sir Syed Ahmad Khan was a social reformer in British India. He worked hard towards improving the lives of poor people and women. He fought against unjust practices in society at a time when the British ruled India. He believed education could help reform Indian society. Sir Syed laid stress on the education of the masses. He set up the Mohammedan Anglo Oriental College in 1875 in Aligarh to promote education among Muslims. It is now known as the Aligarh Muslim University. It continues to be counted among the important educational institutions of India and as a famous center for higher learning. Rabindranath Tagore. Rabindranath Tagore was a poet, writer, musician, and philosopher. He wrote a large number of books and poems such as Gitanjali, Banphool, and Sisu. He was awarded the Nobel Prize for Literature in 1913 for Gitanjali. He composed our national anthem, Jana Gana Mana. Rabindranath had a keen interest in dance and music. He developed his own style of music called Rabindra Sangeet and a new dance form called Rabindra Nritya. Rabindranath believed that education was the only means through which India could progress. In 1901, he started an educational institution called Shanti Niketan or Abode of Peace. It is now known as the Vishwa Bharati University. He lived there till he passed away in 1941. Rabindranath Tagore wrote nearly 50 books and more than 3,000 poems. Mahatma Gandhi. Mahatma Gandhi is known as the father of the nation. He was born on October 2nd, 1869 in Porbandar, Gujarat. He studied law in England and then moved to South Africa to practice law there. At that time, South Africa was ruled by the British. During his stay there, he saw how the British mistreated and discriminated against the Indians and the black natives living there. He launched a non-violent struggle to fight against this racial discrimination. In 1915, Gandhiji returned to India. Under his leadership, the Indian freedom struggle became quite strong. Finally, in 1947, the British were forced to leave the country and grant India its freedom. Gandhiji abolished the practice of untouchability. He called untouchables Harijans or children of God. His work earned him the title of Mahatma or Great Soul. Gandhiji was shot dead on January 30th, 1948. Mother Teresa. Mother Teresa's real name was Agnes Gonja Boyaggio. She was born in 1910 in Skopje, now capital of the Republic of Macedonia. She decided to become a nun when she was only 12 years old. After becoming a nun, she took the name Teresa. She came to India when she was 18 years old. She was greatly moved by the poverty she saw around her. One day, she decided to move to the slums of Kolkata. She worked for the poor and sick and gave them food and medicines. In 1950, she set up the Missionaries of Charity. She set up an orphanage called Nirmal Hriday. She also started leprosy centers. Today, the Missionaries of Charity runs orphanages and hospitals. Mother Teresa received many awards for her work, such as the Bharat Ratna in 1980, the Nobel Prize in 1979, and the Magsaysay Award. She died in 1997. She was proclaimed a saint by the Pope in 2016. Abraham Lincoln. Abraham Lincoln was a great leader in the United States of America. He was born in a poor family in 1809. He spent most of his childhood helping his parents in their farm. Although he could not attend school for less than a year, he taught himself many subjects by reading books. He took up a variety of jobs and finally became a lawyer. Despite the adverse conditions, he went on to become the 16th President of the United States of America in 1861. Around the same time when Lincoln became the president, the northern and southern states of America fought against each other over the issue of slavery. This came to be known as the Civil War from 1861 to 1865. Lincoln was successful in merging the northern and southern states. He brought out the Emancipation Proclamation in 1865, which freed the slaves. Lincoln is well known for his fight against slavery. In his time, Africans were bought and sold in America as slaves. They were treated badly by their white masters and were called Negroes or blacks. They were often made to work for long hours and live in poor conditions. Lincoln was against such treatment. In 1865, he managed to get a law banning slavery passed in the United States of America. He was shot dead on 15th April 1865. Martin Luther King Jr. Martin Luther King Jr. was a great leader and reformer in the United States of America. He was born in 1929. He is known for his work against racial discrimination faced by Africans in America. At that time, blacks were treated badly by whites in many parts of the country. They were not allowed to sit on the same seats as whites on buses. They were not allowed to the same schools, cinemas, and eating places as whites. They were not even allowed to vote. Martin Luther King traveled to India in 1959 and was inspired by stories of Gandhiji and his non-violent methods of protest. He decided to use non-violent means to demand equality for blacks. Martin Luther King's fight for equality gained him a lot of support from blacks. He was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize in 1964. Martin Luther King Jr. was shot dead in 1968. Chapter 17. Living Long and Healthy Lives. A healthy mind resides in a healthy body is a famous proverb that you must have heard before. To stay healthy, what should you do? Yes, nutritious food, exercise, and precaution against diseases are the things that you need to keep in mind. Today, the average lifespan of human beings has increased due to advancement in medical science, and hence the life that we lead today is longer as well as better than our ancestors. This lesson is an introduction to the beginning of this advancement. Medical instruments. Clinical thermometer. How does a doctor check your body temperature when you are unwell? She uses a clinical thermometer and puts it under your armpit or in your mouth for a few seconds. Body temperature is measured in degrees Fahrenheit or degrees Celsius. The normal human body temperature is 98.6 degrees or 37 degrees Celsius. In case the thermometer shows that your body temperature is higher than normal, then you have fever and need medicine to get well. The clinical thermometer was invented by Gabriel Daniel Fahrenheit in 1714. Before this invention, the doctors used to detect fever by touching the patient or checking their pulse. This obviously was not a very accurate method of measuring body temperature. With the invention of thermometer, body temperatures can be measured. Accurate. This helps the doctors in treating their patients. Today there are two types of thermometers available: digital and analog. Stethoscope. When you meet a doctor, do you see a tube like object hanging from her neck? It is a stethoscope. A stethoscope enables a doctor to check your heartbeat and breathing clearly. It was invented by Dr. René Laennec. The story behind its invention is interesting. Once, Dr. Laennec noticed two children sitting at two ends of a hollow log of wood. They were whispering to each other. They could hear even the faintest sound through the log. He went back to his clinic and tried the same thing with a rolled up newspaper on his patient. He placed one end on the patient's chest and the other end to his ears. To his surprise, he could hear the patient's heartbeat. This led to the invention of stethoscope. Today, every doctor uses a stethoscope. In fact, it is difficult to imagine a doctor on duty without a stethoscope around his neck. Microscope. There are many tiny organisms in the world which cannot be seen with the naked eye. In order to see and study them, it was important that their structure be magnified and observed. A microscope is an instrument that makes very small objects look big. A spectacle maker called Zacharias Janssen invented the earliest microscope, named flea glass. Once he happened to look at a fly through two lenses, with one placed behind the other, which surprised him. He realized that the size of the fly appeared much bigger than its actual size. The flea glass became very popular in Europe. Galileo Galilei improved upon the flea glass to create a microscope using two lenses. Over time, scientists improved upon Janssen's invention to create newer versions of the microscope. The microscope has been an important instrument in the fight against diseases. The cause of diseases could now be known. Some modern machines. Today, there are many new and advanced machines that help doctors to understand what goes on inside the human body. X rays, ultrasound, CT scans, and MRI machines are all those advanced machines. About these machines help doctors to know the condition of our body and help them to treat us correctly. They also assist in surgeries.
So in X-rays, the doctor can see our bones, and in MRI machines, he can see our brain. And is for ultrasound is for and CT scan is for uh,
Surgery and antibiotics. Surgery. You must have heard this word sometime, but do you know that surgery means cutting open of a body part? Surgery is done as a part of medical treatment by a doctor in which he cuts open the part which needs to be treated. Doctors who perform surgeries are known as surgeons. Many types of surgeries are performed today using special instruments and medicines. Doctors can now even replace certain damaged organs with healthy ones. Replacement of the heart, kidneys, liver, and many other organs is possible through surgery. To make sure that a patient does not suffer pain during a surgery, it is performed after administering anesthesia to the patient. These medicines make a patient lose consciousness completely or lose sensation in that part of the body where anesthesia is given. The first medicine to be used as anesthesia was chloroform. Antibiotics. Antibiotics are those substances which are capable of destroying disease causing microorganisms, especially bacteria. The first antibiotic, penicillin, was discovered by Alexander Fleming in 1928. It prevents growth of bacteria in the body, thereby preventing infections. Earlier, various diseases such as malaria, cholera, plague, and tuberculosis, which were difficult to treat, are now fully curable with the help of antibiotics. Prevention of diseases. Vaccination. A vaccination is a treatment which makes the body stronger against a particular infection. Vaccinations work by stimulating the natural disease fighting ability of our body. The word vaccine was first used by an English doctor, Edward Jenner. In the 18th century, when smallpox was a deadly disease, he observed that the people who had been infected with cowpox earlier were not at all affected by smallpox. To test this theory, Dr. Jenner first inoculated a boy with cowpox. The boy suffered from mild cowpox but soon recovered. Later, he inoculated the same boy with smallpox. He found that the boy did not get smallpox. In this way, Dr. Jenner found protection against smallpox. Later, vaccine against smallpox was developed. It helped to wipe out smallpox from the world. Today, vaccinations against many diseases are available, such as polio, typhoid, tetanus, and tuberculosis. Pasteurization. Louis Pasteur was a French scientist who discovered that germs could be killed by heating. He found a process through which germs in milk are killed by first boiling it for half an hour at a certain temperature and then cooling it immediately. This process is called pasteurization. Pasteurized milk is available today in polypacks and bottles. It is free of germs. Antiseptic. Antiseptics are those chemicals which, when applied on a wound, kill germs and prevent it from getting infected, thereby helping it to heal. These are also used to disinfect surgical instruments. This is done to ensure that they do not cause any infection. About 150 years ago, Joseph Lister, a British surgeon, realized that infections after surgery were being caused by germs. He used a solution called carbolic acid to prevent these infections. He began dressing the wounds of patients with bandages soaked in a solution of carbolic acid. This was the beginning of antiseptics in the history of medical science. Chapter 18. Recording and Sharing Knowledge.